Vancouver, can you hear me? All right. So listen, we are here today not only to observe the launch of Earth Day, which is actually Wednesday, but we're going to start a little early because it's so beautiful out today, but also to launch Oxfam Canada's Climate Justice Campaign. Let me hear it. Let me hear it. Let me hear you on the beat. All right. So, climate change, it is more than just an environmental issue. It is about poverty and human rights, and it's about the rights of women, especially. At Oxfam, we are passionate about ending global poverty and injustice, and we want to advance women's rights all over the world. In order to address this problem, we must address the changes in climate that is already having a negative impact on all of our lives. Everybody in Manitoba, we see you. So if you're from Manitoba, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The human face of climate change. It's as obvious as it sounds, it's affecting all of us, yet the impact is distributed differently among different regions, generations, age, classes, income groups, and it's hitting, like I said earlier, women hardest. Therefore, we want to invite everyone today to acknowledge this issue, and if you want to come march with us, we're going to go march in solidarity with everybody all over the world, and the fight against climate change starts now. Let me hear it. I'm going to keep going.
Women are important producers of the world's staple crops and produce up to 90% of the world's core food intake. In spite of this, women lack the farming tools and technology needed to cope with the changing weather patterns. The changing climate has impacted people's ability to continue producing food for their families and sustaining their livelihoods. This is compounded for women in many developing countries where they have lower incomes and fewer opportunities than men. While they are more vulnerable, women also tend to be more resilient, which is important to build upon in determining climate change adaptation strategies. Women and girls already walk an average of 6 kilometers in their daily search for water, often carrying up to 20 liters at a time. Climate change obliges women to spend even more time and labor collecting wood and clean water as they must travel farther to reach local sources. Presently, coping with immediate impacts of climate change is all women have the energy and resources to do, and more time spent collecting food, fuel, and water keep them from education and income opportunities that could result in long-term improvement for their families. We in Canada have the power and responsibility to protect further human rights from being violated. The United Nations is holding an international climate change negotiation in Copenhagen this December 2009, and our government must play a positive role in these negotiations. It can make a real difference by committing to cutting emissions as well as committing money and adaptations to ensuring women's participation in the negotiations.
What do we want? We want the Canadian government to play a positive role in climate change negotiations and commit to policy change addressing the impact this has on women's rights and development. We want the Canadian government to significantly cut greenhouse emissions and to help negotiate a climate change deal that would provide funding and empower women living in poverty to adapt to climate change. There is a real need for Canada's international development initiatives to increase funding to women's organizations for needs like agricultural adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and community resilience. Climate adaptation and development strategies should include the need for sufficient food, clean water, renewable clean energy, cooking fuels, a climate-proof asset base to prevent poverty, protection against climate change-induced flood, famine, drought, and conflict, and the provision of climate change-related education. World leaders will be congregating in Copenhagen, December 2009, to finalize the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. They must recognize the key role that women play in their communities as powerful agents of change responsible for the food security, health, and survival of their families. In this recognition, international governments must ensure that women's input is central to these negotiations and with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change itself. Here's some facts for you. Women make up the majority of the world's poor. Of the 1.3 billion poor worldwide, 70% are women. In the poorest areas of the world, women and girls can spend 3 to 4 hours per day collecting water as firewood. Of the 115 million children of the world who do not go to school, 3/5 are girls, and women constitute 75% of the world's illiterate population. The high mortality rates of women during disasters resulted in increases in numbers of orphans and mortality rates, early marriages for young girls, causing them to drop out of school, trafficking, prostitution, which in turn increased exposure to HIV and AIDS.
That's right. Oxfam Canada's Walk for Climate Justice. We're going to Jericho Beach. Everybody's welcome.